And that was John Muller reporting for us. And there's a lot to break down here. So joining us now to discuss the historic day, political scientist and historian Dan Cassino. Great to have you back.
Yeah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And we've been saying all morning this is historic for so many reasons, but why do you think that this day will go down in history? For what reasons?
Look, so inaugural addresses very, very rarely make news. You know, the inaugural address, this is a tradition that goes back to George Washington, who gave this very impromptu ceremony. His speech, of course, is only about a minute and a half because he didn't know he was giving a speech. He didn't even know he was having a parade. He just showed up and people started parading. He's like, guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
The only time we've ever had any news, real news made in the inauguration was actually with President James Buchanan in 1857, who in his inaugural address surprised everyone by saying he was not going to run for a second term in office. Probably a good thing considering he is considered probably the worst president we've ever had. So we don't expect big news out of this. However, this is unusual for any sort of inaugural address just because he is giving a second inaugural address 8 years after his first one. We've only had that happen once before with Grover Cleveland. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he says here, because he has to lay out his agenda for his second term, knowing that this is a lame duck term. So coming in as a lame duck, this is not something we see happening a lot.
A lame duck term, though, but he has both houses of Congress. So he can get a lot done in his final years in office.
Absolutely right. So this is true of almost every president. They come into office with control of the House and the Senate. Almost every modern president does. And then typically they lose that control after 2 years. But he has this early notion. We talk about the first 100 days, going back to FDR, where you could really get a lot of stuff done. This is when your political capital is at its greatest. Generally, when presidents' approval ratings are at their greatest, they have the most political capital, they can get the most stuff done if they can wrangle Congress. And that's always the question. We know that the president has a lot of stuff he wants to get done. How much can he win over Congress and get Congress to go along with him? The first couple of weeks are probably set up with all of the attempts to get his cabinet in place in the Senate. That's going to take up a lot of time and effort. The question is how much. In the past, we've seen presidents get derailed. Bill Clinton, during his first 100 days, spent the entire time arguing about whether attorney general nominees should have to pay taxes for their nannies.
And on top of everything, he's the first convicted felon to take office.
Yeah, this, today is really much a day we talk about, trying to bring the country together. This is a celebration of democratic processes.
On Martin Luther King Jr.
On Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That hasn't happened since Bill Clinton's second inauguration. But this is a challenge to American norms, right? So this is the fight we're going to be having really over the next 4 years. We've got President Trump, who is very much about challenging norms, challenging the way we've done things in the past, including by being the first convicted felony president, going up against these ceremonies, which are all about the norms of democracy.
So let's talk about some of the things that we're seeing take place today, starting with something that President Biden did on his final day in office, and that was issuing these preemptive pardons to folks like Dr. Fauci, General McMillan, members of the January 6th committee. Is it typical for an outgoing president to issue these preemptive pardons on a final day in office?
No, this is very, very unusual. So it is very common for presidents to issue a lot of pardons right before they leave office. And oftentimes these are the most controversial pardons. Think of Bill Clinton's pardoning of financier Mark Rich. So we have controversial pardons that come out at the end. Preemptive pardons are really weird. They don't happen very often. And what the president is saying is you cannot put this person on trial for this later, even though, as President Biden said, these people didn't do anything wrong. They shouldn't be on trial, but I'm worried that they will be brought up on charges, so I'm going to preemptively do this. It's very unusual, and I think President Biden has said he feels like this is an unusual situation that requires this sort of thing.
Well, let's talk about the actual ceremony today. Are there any traditions in the inauguration that folks might not know about?
Oh, sure. So, for instance, we have the swearing on the Bible. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they sworn in a Bible. We've only had one president who didn't. That was John Quincy Adams, who came into office and was sworn in on a book of laws. He thought that was more appropriate. We talk about the Masonic Bible is the one that's used to swear presidents in. This is the fodder for a lot of conspiracy theories. Why is it a Masonic Bible? The answer is because when George Washington was inaugurated, they forgot to bring a Bible, so they had to go borrow one from the local Masonic Lodge.
Oh, wow. Dan, you're a wealth of information. Always love talking to you, and you're sticking around for our coverage later on today of this historic ceremony. You can tune in right here on PIX11 for that, and streaming on PIX7 Plus. We'll also have continued coverage throughout the day.